My name is Emma Collins, 27 years old and working as a freelance graphic designer in Boston. I've always been the quiet one in my family, the observer, the one who notices things others don't. That's probably why Grandma Rose and I had such a special bond. I was sitting beside her hospital bed, holding her frail hand. The cancer had taken almost everything from her, but not her spirit, not her sharp mind. The room was quiet, except for the rhythmic beeping of machines and the occasional squeak of nurses' shoes in the hallway. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the sterile white sheets. "Emma, dear," she whispered, her voice barely audible. Her once vibrant blue eyes, now clouded with age and illness, found mine with surprising clarity. "I need you to listen carefully." I leaned closer, brushing a strand of her silver hair from her forehead. "I'm here, Grandma." Her fingers tightened around mine with unexpected strength. "It's all yours now," she said, her voice suddenly stronger, more deliberate. "Remember what I taught you. Trust yourself." Before I could ask what she meant, she closed her eyes, exhaustion overtaking her. She passed away peacefully that night, with me still holding her hand. The following days were a blur of funeral arrangements, condolences, and family tensions bubbling just beneath the surface of polite conversation. My mother, Diane, was Grandma Rose's only daughter, but there were cousins, aunts, and uncles, all suddenly very interested in honoring Rose's memory, though most had barely visited during her illness. My family has always been complicated. The Collinses are old New England money, not Rockefeller wealthy, but comfortable enough that inheritance matters. Grandma Rose had been the family matriarch since Grandpa died 15 years ago, and she'd managed the family estate with shrewd intelligence. Everyone knew there was significant wealth to be distributed, and the vultures were circling. The reading of the will was scheduled for Friday at the offices of Grandma's longtime attorney, Mr. Harrington, a stern man with wire-rimmed glasses and a perpetual frown. As I entered the wood-paneled conference room, I felt the weight of expectation and tension. My mother sat rigidly beside me, her face a careful mask. Uncle Robert, always the most vocal about family responsibility, was already there with his wife Vivian, both dressed in expensive, understated black. My cousins Marcus and Stephanie sat across from us, their expressions a mixture of appropriate grief and poorly concealed anticipation. Mr. Harrington cleared his throat and began reading the document. "I, Rose Elizabeth Collins, being of sound mind and body, do hereby..." As he continued, I felt a growing sense of confusion. The will distributed the family home to my mother, various investments to Uncle Robert, the summer cottage to Marcus, valuable antiques to Stephanie, and several other specific bequests to various family members. To me, she left her collection of books and personal journals. Nothing else. I could feel my mother's relief beside me, Uncle Robert's satisfied nod, the subtle exchange of glances between my cousins. No one was surprised that I, the quiet granddaughter who had spent the most time with Rose in her final years, had received what appeared to be sentimental items of little monetary value. But Grandma's final words echoed in my mind. "It's all yours now." What had she meant? As the family filed out, already discussing renovation plans for the properties and what to do with various assets, Mr. Harrington caught my eye and gave me a barely perceptible nod. "Ms. Collins, if you could stay behind for a moment, there's the matter of your grandmother's personal effects." When everyone else had left, he closed the door and his demeanor changed completely. "Emma," he said, dropping the formality, "your grandmother left specific instructions that I was to give you this after the reading." He handed me a small envelope. Inside was a safety deposit box key and a note in Grandma's elegant handwriting. "First National Bank, Downtown Branch. Box, Burr 1847. Go alone. Tell no one." I looked up at Mr. Harrington, questions forming on my lips. "I don't know what's in the box," he said, answering before I could ask. Rose was cautious in her final months. She didn't share everything, even with me. He hesitated. "But I would suggest you follow her instructions precisely." As I left the office, clutching the key in my palm, I felt the weight of Grandma's words again. "It's all yours now." Whatever it was, I had a feeling my life was about to change forever. The First National Bank of Boston stood like a monument to old money, all marble columns and brass fixtures. I'd passed it countless times but had never had reason to enter. Now, with Grandma's key burning a hole in my pocket, I pushed through the heavy revolving door into the cool, hushed interior. The safety deposit box area was in the basement, accessed through a security checkpoint where I had to show ID and sign a register. The attendant, an older woman with reading glasses hanging from a chain around her neck, examined the key. Box 1847, she noted. Haven't seen anyone access that one in years. She led me to a private viewing room. I'll retrieve the box for you. Take your time. When she returned with the metal container and left me alone, I sat staring at it for several minutes. What secrets had Grandma kept that required this level of privacy? With a deep breath, I inserted the key and opened the lid. Inside was a leather portfolio, a small wooden box, and a sealed envelope with my name written on it. I opened the envelope first. "My dearest Emma," Grandma's letter began. "If you're reading this, then the official will has been read, and our family believes they know how I've chosen to distribute my legacy. They are mistaken." My heart raced as I continued reading. "What no one in the family knows, not even your mother, is that over the past 20 years, I've been quietly building a separate estate. Investments, properties, and assets that don't appear in any family records. Your grandfather and I always believed that wealth revealed true character, and I've watched with sadness as money has corrupted much of our family." I paused, thinking of Uncle Robert's constant maneuvering for position, my cousin's entitled attitudes, even my mother's obsession with maintaining appearances. "You, Emma, have shown me something different. You've demonstrated compassion, integrity, and wisdom beyond your years. You visited me not for what you could get, but for what we could share. This is why I've made you the sole beneficiary of my true estate." My hands trembled as I opened the leather portfolio. Inside were deeds to properties I'd never heard of, statements from investment accounts with balances that made me gasp, and documentation for a charitable foundation established in a trust under Grandma's name. The wooden box contained a vintage Patek Philippe watch that had belonged to my grandfather, a set of antique keys labeled for properties listed in the portfolio, and a small velvet pouch containing my grandmother's engagement ring, a stunning emerald surrounded by diamonds. The letter continued. "There is a second will, dated after the one Mr. Harrington read to the family. It is legally binding and has been properly witnessed and notarized. This will supersedes the first and transfers all these assets to you. Mr. Harrington has instructions to file it with the probate court 1 week from the reading of the first will." I sat back, stunned. According to these documents, I was now the owner of multiple properties across New England, substantial investment portfolios, and the controlling interest in the charitable foundation that apparently held the majority of Grandma Rose's true wealth. "I've done this not to create family discord," her letter explained, "but because I believe you will be a better steward of this legacy than anyone else. The others have received what they expected, and what I believe they can handle responsibly. You have received what I know you will use wisely." The final paragraph hit me hardest. "The family will be shocked, perhaps angry. Some may never forgive you, or me. But remember what I've always taught you. True character shows not in how people treat you when they need something, but in how they treat you when they believe you have nothing to offer them. You've seen their true characters. Now they will see yours. It's all yours now, Emma. Make me proud." I sat in that small room for nearly an hour, trying to process what this meant. The quiet granddaughter, overlooked and underestimated, had just become the most powerful member of the Collins family, and in 1 week, everyone would know it. As I finally gathered the documents and prepared to leave, my phone buzzed with a text from my mother. "Family dinner tonight at the house. Everyone will be there to discuss next steps. 7 p.m. Don't be late." Little did they know what next steps really meant. I tucked the portfolio under my arm, slipped the wooden box into my bag, and headed for the exit, my mind already racing with what would happen when the truth came out. The family home, Grandma Rose's Victorian mansion in Beacon Hill, loomed before me as I climbed the familiar steps. Soon, according to the documents in my apartment safe, this house would legally be mine, not my mother's. The thought made my stomach twist with anxiety. I could hear voices from the dining room as I let myself in. The family was already gathered around the massive mahogany table that had hosted Collins' family dinners for generations. My mother had wasted no time assuming the role of hostess, sitting at the head of the table where Grandma always sat. "Emma, finally," she said as I entered. "We were about to start without you." Uncle Robert raised his wineglass in my direction. "The bookworm arrives," Did you get started cataloging Rose's library yet? His laugh was just a touch too loud, his smile not reaching his eyes. Not yet, I said quietly, taking the only empty seat, at the far end of the table, as far from the center of power as possible. Typical. The dinner proceeded with discussions about practical matters. My mother announced her plans to renovate the kitchen and master suite. Uncle Robert talked about consolidating the investment portfolios with his financial advisor. Marcus and Stephanie debated whether the summer cottage should be rented out or kept for family use. No one asked my opinion. No one even seemed to remember I was there, except when Cousin Stephanie turned to me during dessert. "So, Emma, what are you going to do with all those dusty old books?" she asked, her tone making it clear how worthless she considered my inheritance. Before I could answer, Uncle Robert chimed in. "You know, if there are any first editions, those might actually be worth something. I know a dealer who could appraise them." Of course. The only interest in my inheritance was what they might extract from it. "I think I'll keep them," I said. "Grandma wanted me to have them for a reason." My mother sighed. "Emma, always the sentimental one. That's lovely, dear, but we need to be practical. This family has significant assets to manage now." "Speaking of which," Uncle Robert said, leaning forward, "I've been thinking about the Collins Family Trust. As the one with the most financial experience, I should probably take over as trustee." I nearly choked on my water. The Collins Family Trust was actually the smaller of two trusts Grandma had established. The documents in my safe revealed that the major assets were in the Rose Collins Foundation, of which I was now the sole trustee. "I think we should wait," I said, finding my voice. Grandma was very methodical. There might be instructions we don't know about yet. Uncle Robert waved his hand dismissively. "The will was clear, Emma. Everything has been distributed. There's no mystery here. If only he knew." As coffee was served, my mother brought up the subject I'd been dreading. "Emma, about your living situation. Now that I'll be taking over this house, I think it's time we discussed your apartment." My one-bedroom apartment in Cambridge was modest, but perfect for me. I'd been paying my own rent since graduating college, despite my mother's frequent hints that it was unnecessary for a Collins to live so frugally. "What about my apartment?" I asked cautiously. "Well, dear, it seems silly for you to keep renting when we have so much family property now. You could move into the carriage house behind the main property. It would save you money, and you'd be closer to family. Closer to supervision," she meant. Easier to keep the quiet daughter in her assigned role. "I'm happy where I am," I said firmly. My mother's smile tightened. "Don't be difficult, Emma. We're trying to make sensible arrangements for everyone." The conversation continued around me. Plans being made. Assets being divided and reallocated. All based on a will that would be superseded in just a few days. I sat quietly, the weight of my secret heavy on my shoulders. As the evening wound down, I helped clear the dishes. A task none of the others bothered with. In the kitchen, I found Mrs. Peterson, who had been Grandma's housekeeper for decades. "They're already changing everything, aren't they?" she asked quietly, handing me a towel as she washed a crystal glass. I nodded, unsure how much to say. "Your grandmother worried about that," she continued. "She told me once that money doesn't change people. It just reveals who they've been all along." I looked at her sharply. "Did she tell you anything else? About her plans?" Mrs. Peterson smiled mysteriously. "Rose kept her own counsel, but she did say that you were the only one who really saw her. Not her money, not her position, just her." She patted my hand. "Whatever happens next, she trusted you. Remember that." As I left that night, Uncle Robert was already measuring for new drapes in the study, my mother was on the phone with a contractor, and my cousins were arguing over who would get Grandma's car. None of them said goodbye. Walking to my car, I realized Grandma had given me more than wealth. She'd given me the chance to see my family clearly, without pretense. The question now was, what would I do with that knowledge when the second will was revealed? The week passed in a blur of activity. I met privately with Mr. Harrington to understand the full scope of my inheritance and responsibilities. The numbers were staggering. Grandma Rose had been far wealthier than anyone in the family had realized, and she had hidden her true assets masterfully. "Your grandmother was concerned about the influence of too much money too easily obtained," Mr. Harrington explained. "The properties and investments the family knows about represent perhaps 20% of her true estate." I spent hours reviewing the foundation documents. learning about the charitable work Grandma had been quietly funding for years: scholarships for first-generation college students, support for elder care facilities, grants for women entrepreneurs. This was her real legacy, not the houses and heirlooms the family was squabbling over. The day before the second will was to be filed, I received calls from both my mother and Uncle Robert, each outlining their plans for family assets and assigning me small, insignificant roles in their grand visions. I listened politely, knowing everything would change tomorrow. That night, I barely slept, rehearsing what I would say, how I would handle the inevitable shock and anger. By morning, I felt strangely calm. Grandma had trusted me. I wouldn't let her down. Mr. Harrington had arranged for the family to meet at his office, claiming there were additional documents that required signatures. Everyone arrived promptly, irritated at the inconvenience but unwilling to risk missing something important. The conference room felt smaller with the tension that filled it. I sat quietly, hands folded in my lap, as Mr. Harrington entered with a file folder. "Thank you all for coming," he began formally. "I've asked you here because there is an additional will executed by Rose Collins, dated 3 weeks before her death, which supersedes the document we reviewed previously." The reaction was immediate. Uncle Robert's face flushed red. "What? That's impossible. Why wasn't this presented at the initial reading?" "Because Mrs. Collins left explicit instructions about the timing," Mr. Harrington replied calmly, opening the folder. "This will has been properly executed, witnessed, and notarized. It is legally binding." As he began to read, the atmosphere in the room shifted from confusion to shock to outrage. Property by property, account by account, everything that had been distributed among the family was now reassigned to me, along with assets none of them had known existed. When Mr. Harrington finished, the silence was deafening. My mother found her voice first. "This can't be right. Rose wouldn't do this to her own daughter. Emma must have influenced her when she was vulnerable," Uncle Robert accused, pointing at me. "This is elder abuse. We'll contest it." Mr. Harrington raised his hand. Mrs. Collins anticipated such reactions. She recorded a video statement explaining her decisions, which I'm prepared to play now. He turned a monitor toward us and pressed play. Grandma Rose appeared, sitting in her favorite armchair, looking frail but clear-eyed and determined. "If you're watching this," she began, "then you've just learned that I've left the bulk of my estate to my granddaughter, Emma. I expect some of you are angry or hurt. Some of you may be planning legal challenges. Before you proceed, you should know that this decision was made with full mental capacity, without any undue influence, and after years of careful observation." She leaned forward slightly. "I've watched how each of you has handled money and responsibility. I've noted who visited me out of genuine affection, and who appeared only when decisions about the estate were being made. I've seen who treats people with kindness, regardless of what they can offer in return." Her gaze seemed to meet each family member's eyes through the screen. "Emma has demonstrated wisdom, compassion, and integrity. She has earned my trust not by seeking it, but by being trustworthy. The others among you have received what I believe you can handle responsibly, but the stewardship of the Collins legacy now passes to Emma." As the video ended, the room erupted. Accusations flew, threats of legal action, emotional appeals. Through it all, I remained silent, letting the storm wash over me. Finally, when the shouting subsided, I spoke. "I didn't ask for this responsibility, but I intend to honor Grandma's wishes. The foundation will continue its charitable work. The family properties will remain available for family use, though ownership has changed. No one is being evicted or cut off." I looked at each of them in turn. "What changes is who makes the decisions. Grandma trusted me to make good ones, and I will." The meeting ended with cold silence. My family filed out without looking at me, their backs rigid with anger and shock. Only Mrs. Peterson, who had been invited at my request, remained behind. "You did well," she said, squeezing my hand. "Rose would be proud." In the weeks that followed, the family dynamics shifted dramatically. Uncle Robert and my cousins consulted attorneys but were advised that the will was unassailable. My mother alternated between tearful recriminations and awkward attempts to repair our relationship, now that I controlled the family fortune. I moved into Grandma's house, not because I wanted the grandeur, but because it felt right to continue her legacy from the home she had loved. Mrs. Peterson stayed on, becoming both employee and friend, sharing stories about Grandma that helped guide my decisions. Slowly, I began implementing changes. The foundation expanded its work. Family members who demonstrated responsibility were given meaningful roles in managing specific assets. Those who couldn't move beyond their resentment gradually drifted away. 6 months after the second will was revealed, I was working in Grandma's study, my study now, when I found a hidden compartment in her desk. Inside was a letter, dated just days before her death. "Emma," it read, "by now you've weathered the storm. Some family ties may be broken, others strained. This is the true test I couldn't prepare you for, the loneliness that sometimes comes with responsibility. But remember that true family is built on love and respect, not blood and obligation. You'll find your people. Some may even be the relatives who eventually understand why I made this choice." I traced her handwriting with my finger, feeling her presence in the room. "It's all yours now," she had whispered. "Not just the money or the properties, but the chance to reshape what family meant, to build something meaningful from what she had entrusted to me." The weight of that responsibility was still heavy, but for the first time since her passing, it also felt like a gift. As I closed the letter, I noticed Mrs. Peterson had quietly entered with tea, Grandma's favorite blend. "You found it," she said, nodding at the letter. "She said you would, when the time was right." "Did she know how hard this would be?" I asked. Mrs. Peterson smiled. "She knew you were stronger than you thought. She used to say, 'Emma sees with her heart first, but her mind is sharp as a tack. She'll find her way.'" I poured 2 cups of tea, offering one to Mrs. Peterson, breaking the upstairs-downstairs boundary that my family had always maintained. "To Grandma Rose," I said, raising my cup, "and to finding my way." Outside, the first snow of winter began to fall, covering the garden where Grandma had taught me to identify flowers, where we'd talked about books and life and what really matters. The world looked clean and new, full of possibility. It was all mine now, and I was finally ready.